So I'm very pleased to be interviewing Curtis Sargent here today, and he's part of the 2414 Coalition and other things, which we'll find out through this interview. But Curtis, could you share with us, when did you first come across the concepts that are now being called church planting movements, disciple-making movements, and where have you personally worked to put them into practice?
Yeah, well, the first place that I was doing this was among an unengaged people group on an island off the south coast of China. My task was supposedly to establish a beachhead church that would then be able to advance, the evangelization of that people group. I was very dissatisfied with that goal. I thought the goal should be to saturate the island with the gospel, but at the same time, I realized very quickly that there was nothing that I had ever seen or heard of that could possibly do that in my lifetime. So I began to pray and purpose in my heart to only do things that would result in multiplying disciples and multiplying simple house churches, and that if multiplication could happen, then it was possible to reach them. And that is indeed what ended up happening. And that was in 1991. And so I've been working on this since then.
And as you look back at that experience of yours, and as you've learned about other people who've been practicing similar things around the globe, can you give us the sense of the scope of what's going on here and how you actually legitimately know it's happening, that it's not just a whole bunch of inflated pop culture fishtails?
Yeah, so that story the short answer would be in the 2414 coalition that you mentioned. So that's a coalition of practitioners of this type of approach to disciple making and church planting. Not many years ago, we didn't really have any good sense of how much this was being used, because the early places were all in restricted access environments. And so security was a big concern. So there wasn't a lot of communication about it or publicity. But about 3 years ago, when the 2414 coalition began to emerge or be formed, we began doing research, on that and getting in touch with people who were in movements all over the place, and then seeing who they were in touch with, and then kind of putting all these pieces together. And so currently there are, well over 1,300 movements that we know about using these type of approaches. And those have resulted in about 77 million new disciples. And the vast majority of that fruit has only come about in the last 10 years or so. So it's something that no one realized was going on at the scale and scope it was, until we tried to put everybody in touch with each other. And then these reports began to trickle in. And so there's I believe he has a little dashboard that gives regular updates on these numbers that I'm throwing out as he unearths, or uncovers more of what's happening.